Contestant number 2, the title of his oration is Secure the Blessings of Liberty. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to everyone here who has served our country. Without our veterans, our freedoms would no longer be with us, and the guaranteed freedoms given in our Constitution would no longer be with here today. Last March, I had the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. with 16 other young men and women through the Americanism and Government Test Program. Through this opportunity, I had the chance to go to many museums, monuments, and national history sites. One of these places was the National Archives, home of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, among many of the other documents that made America what it is. I will simply say that the Constitution is the backbone to our great nation. It is the reason why it's the oldest active Constitution in the world, and that's because it is effective in what it does. And besides being effective, it also manages to do this in a short amount of time as well. It is also the shortest active Constitution in the world. And that also reflects the framers' vision that the government would not be overarching in every aspect. With its 4,543 words and 7,591, including amendments, it manages to achieve its main goals. First and foremost, it needed to tell us how the government would be organized. And this is done through the first 3 articles of the Constitution, and it's been done with very few changes since its inception. The main change being the direct election of senators, which is given in the 17th Amendment. But besides that, our system has remained pretty steady. Speaking of amendments, this process is outlined in a single paragraph in Article 5. Following that is the Supremacy Clause, which officially put the Constitution as the law of the land. Finally, the ratification procedure was outlined in a single sentence. So going on to amendments, there are currently 27 amendments to the United States Constitution, with 26 of them being still active today. While some of them are more famous than others, such as the First Amendment, which gives freedom of speech, freedom of religion, among others, each of them has added a new part of the American dream that has stuck with us ever since. So the amendments, each of the amendments, as I've stated, have their own place, and they all have added an aspect that makes the American dream more possible for everybody to achieve. So going on from there, each of the amendments exists in order to serve a purpose to add rights and duties to United States citizens. Sometimes even correspond with one another. For example, the 26th Amendment, which gave 18-year-olds the right to vote shortly after the Vietnam War. This allowed more citizens to have being able to partake in their governmental system. However, despite the fact that the #1 duty of Americans is to vote, a good portion of Americans do not vote at all. According to the United States Census website, 60.1% of Americans voted in the 2016 election. Also, according to the United States Census information, this is about consistent with about the past 30 years of electoral information. However, this is even more concerning during midterm elections. In the 2014 midterm elections, less than 40% of the American voting age population actually voted. But more on this later. One of the presumptions of the Founding Fathers was that no single person or governmental body gave the rights to their citizens. They believed that these rights were divine and it came from God. Using this presumption, they knew that they did not have the right to take away or limit the rights of their citizens. This leads into popular sovereignty, which is a doctrine in political theory which states that the government is created by and subject to the will of the people. However, this is only just one of the main tenets that the government is built on. Another one of these is limited government. This is because the Founding Fathers knew what an overreaching government was capable of, but they also knew what a government that did not care about its people was capable of. As you know, these actions by the British government, led by King George III, eventually sparked our war for independence. After this long-fought war, fought by patriots, that led to an American victory, we needed to set up a new system of government. However, many issues arose. We wanted to make sure that we did not fall into the same trap as before, and we wanted to make sure that government did not intervene in every aspect of life as it had to deal with people before. Also, they wanted a democratic system with Republican candidates to shape the government. This would be a government by the people, for the people. Unfortunately, the first draft of this did not work very well. While the Articles of Confederation had good ideas in it, unfortunately, its poor design and many flaws led to it being just scrapped in just a few years. What came next was a constitution, a revolutionary new way of governing. It included checks and balances and separation of powers that had never been seen before. This would prevent the government from being too big and also would give new rights and liberties from the government being a smaller size. But however, many of the Founding Fathers still were not convinced and were concerned about future implications and how the government could still get large. So this all changed when James Madison wrote the Bill of Rights. These 10 new freedoms and liberties were what allowed the Constitution to get ratified pretty easily by the 9 states needed, and also gave new rights to the citizens that we all know today. Unfortunately, our rights have not gone without being under attack, both in the past and present. One of the first examples in United States history occurred under the second President, John Adams, through the Alien and Sedition Acts. Specifically, the Sedition Act gave the government the power to arrest those who disagreed with the government's actions and who spoke out against it. This was largely seen as a partisan attack against the Democratic Republicans, who were the minority at the time. So, the American people are not about to take this, though. And although the Supreme Court cannot do anything about this, as the power of judicial review was not firmly established until Marbury v. Madison in 1803, the American people were able to use their best tool, which is voting, to put a stop to this. In 1800 elections, they voted out the Federalists that initiated the act, and installed a new Democratic-Republican government with Thomas Jefferson as president, and the act was quickly repealed. And although the acts were repealed, the American people would soon not forget, as the Federalists never once again had a majority in Congress, and the party soon quickly dissolved. Since judicial review was implemented, the Supreme Court has always looked to uphold the rights of United States citizens by striking down unconstitutional legislation. These legislation can appear from anywhere, from any level of functioning government, but if appealed enough, they can reach the Supreme Court. So while the decisions of the Supreme Court are controversial occasionally, they do always look to hold the rights of the United States citizens above anything else. However, it's not always been the case. For example, according to Cornell Law School, Schenck v. United States ruled that speech was not protected if there was a clear and present danger indicated in the message. While this decision has been revised many times, most notably in Brandenburg v. Ohio, it's generally made that speech that could imply a danger is not free. To give an oversimplified version, this is why you do not speak about firearms or explosives in an airport. Besides this one example, it is generally made that the Supreme Court has remained consistent in fighting for our citizens. Even though the topic of hate speech is controversial, if it is made illegal, this would technically be an infringement of our First Amendment rights. This has remained through many Supreme Court cases, and while they stated that is reprehensible of hate speech, is indeed legal. This has been proven through many cases, including the Ku Klux Klan, Westboro Baptist Church, among many other groups. So the way our system of government is set up is in a way that allows the 3 branches of government to make sure that not one of them gets too large, and also to help protect the rights of United States citizens. However, we cannot rely on the government, and should not rely on the government, to uphold our rights. This is squarely on the shoulders of the citizens to preserve and defend. Today, we've accepted complacency and sloth of United States citizens on their rights. The egregious violations of our constitutional rights over the past few decades have been ignored by Americans regardless of political party. This should be something that should unite all Americans, but unfortunately that has not happened in cases involving First and Second Amendment, among many others. Benjamin Franklin put it best when he said, "Those who would give up a little essential liberty to purchase some temporary security deserve neither liberty nor safety." Many Americans believe that we should give up some of our freedom and liberty in order to feel safe. But unfortunately, without our liberty, we are neither safe nor free. The best way we can do this is by making sure that we go to the ballot box, going back to the previous point. We need to make sure we vote in congressmen and women who will promise to preserve our rights, and that actually will do, as we will be able to judge them again in just a few years. But unfortunately, as you know, Congress has a very low approval rating, but many people do not do anything about it. According to the Rasmussen report, incumbents are reelected over 94% of the time. If we're going to complain about Congress so much, why don't we do something about it instead of just voting for the name we know? A passionate and active voter population is what the Founding Fathers imagined and what they wanted for this country. Unfortunately, that is not happening at this rate. However, I did have the experience to know what a passionate, active voter population is like. On the last election day, I had the chance to work at a polling station with Americans of all different backgrounds. While the work was arduous and long, as I'd be there from 6 in the morning till about 9:30 at night, it was essential that these critical elements of liberty and democracy continue to go. While these Americans came from all walks of life, what really matters was the preservation of democracy that we made that day. So in the end, if all Americans could be like the men and women that I worked with, that is how we could return to what the Founding Fathers wanted. So in the end, America is the land of the free, let's keep it that way. Thank you.